And we're back on Shardlight Radio. I'm your host, Mr. Ben, and on today's episode, I want to talk about the sneak peek that happened this weekend at Geek City Games and Comics in North Liberty, Iowa. So to begin, I want to complain a little bit. I had predicted on a previous episode that it might not feel great to open Revelations packs and have your rare card be a card that you already paid for in Genesis or Generations. I am not wrong about that. It doesn't feel great to open up your first pack at the sneak peek and see a Black Rose Knight, especially when the 7-year-old next to me is opening up stamped Eccentric Visitors. But the Black Rose Knight is at least a playable card. I guess, quick pause, our sneak peek used 3 locked towers. Every player had to play fire, water, and light as their towers. And we also required all players to use 10 Argent shards. So there were no special shards in anybody's shard deck, which I will revisit that particular topic again later in the show. Because of this, that made my second pack just the worst. I opened up a Kite shard. The Kite shard is already the worst shard, so that sucks. I already have 3 of them. That sucks. And I'm at a sealed event where I can't play the rare in one of my packs. That sucks. Now, I know there was some comments made about how ARG was going to be a little bit more thoughtful and deliberate about the cards that they choose to put into the expansion packs going forward, and they're doing away with the foil pack, and that's bringing the pricing down, and that's all positive. That absolutely is unavoidable. If expansion packs are going to sell at all, then I think they really need to make the content in them exclusive to those expansion packs. That disappointed and deflated feeling that I got opening my first 2 packs and having both of the rares be cards that I already had play sets of, and the second one be a card that I don't need 3 copies of, now I have 4, and I can't use it in the event that I'm attending. Just a whole layer upon layer of bad feelings surrounding that. Setting that aside, everything else about the event was pretty terrific. I do think that the next time I run an event at my local store, that we will allow players to use whatever towers they choose. I think that locking it to those 3 towers was me being a little bit paranoid. I knew that there were 2 players who were under the age 10 coming to our event, and there was at least 1 player who had never played any kind of competitive cards at a store before, so we had a fairly large amount of inexperience in the expected player base for our event. So I felt like lessening the number of variables that people had to worry about was probably a good idea. My worry was totally unfounded. All the players handled deck building and the whole event flawlessly, and I think going forward, letting players pick their own towers makes a lot of sense. I also think that there's some pretty significant imbalance amongst champions. Now, we had enough champions and spirits that anybody was able to play basically whatever they wanted, so that didn't end up being a problem. But for a player who maybe focuses on playing, green, say, one of the 2 green champions is absolutely a dead card in sealed, without a doubt. So, whereas another champion like, say, Hoenna is able to generate value almost regardless of what cards you put in your deck. And given that sealed is such a board-centric format, and with only the 3 towers, there was just a lot of pressure on keeping things on the board. A champion like Hoenna is very well positioned, whereas a champion like Ariana is basically a dead card. Even though my first couple packs were pretty disappointing, I did pull a Misshaper, which I thought in sealed, great, here's another card that's not really going to work. However, in the remainder of my sealed pool, I did pull duplicates of a couple of cards, so Misshaper maybe would have had some targets. Didn't ever work out that way in any of my games, but it didn't feel like all of my rares were just completely useless. So to get to the deck, I played Hoenna Buckeye. And I have to say, I think Buckeye in a sealed format is wildly overpowered. The ability to start the game with a token in play is really big. It's really impactful to be able to start disrupting what my opponent wants to do. Basically, before turn 1 starts, I'm already in their way. But also the damage nullification power on both the token and on Buckeye himself. Again, in sealed, your deck is unlikely to have a whole lot of redundancy, so losing an important character can really swing a game. If my opponent invests a lot to kill one of my units and I can just soul burst my Buckeye and keep my units in play, that can be decisive, and it was throughout the day, more than once. Some other cards that I really felt like are just straight up broken in the sealed format. The Eccentric Stranger, while it didn't end up in my deck, the kid who got it did of course play it, and given the nature of the format, having a couple broken towers is not that hard to do, and there was more than one game where he soul bursted his Sola, played the Stranger, recovered Sola, and then soul bursted him again for a huge swing, basically investing a very minimal amount of Shardlight to get thousands of power out on the board. 2,000 power Guardians plus the Stranger himself. Very intimidating board swing that's possible with that card. Being able to recur him and do that multiple times in a constructed game, that would change things significantly. I'm not sure that I have a good grasp on the overall power level on any given card because I've only played with the new cards in sealed. Another card that I specifically wanted to mention being just busted in sealed is the Stasis Sentinel. This is the 1-cost augment that at the end of your turn you put a counter on it, and once there's 4 counters on it, you can sacrifice the augment to generate a 4,000 power mech with Destroyer. This is disgusting. Now, I don't think this card is going to see any play at all in Constructed because that's a format where Zephyr Crystal exists. If I have a Zephyr Crystal and I can kill your augment basically for free, yes, I realize you have to pay 2 Shardlight and you have to exhaust the augment, but it's not costing you cards out of your hand. It's power that you can do an infinite number of times. It's not like a spell where you do it once and it costs you the card and then it's gone. Zephyr Crystal is just such a hard stop to any deck that relies on augments that I don't expect to see Stasis Sentinel see any play whatsoever outside of sealed, but within the sealed format, this card decided multiple games for me and other players. Everybody who ran the Stasis Sentinel won games on the back of that card. In fact, the final table was me versus my son, both of us with Stasis Sentinels in our deck. Another interaction that I had in my deck that I really liked was the 2-cost Shard Mecha Buki. Not only is he an okay card on his own, but his power to go search for the Shard Mecha Tsubasa is very, very good. The target attack on Buki lets you clean up some smaller threats. I mean, he does have a printed 1,000 power, but he strikes with 1,500 because of his power, so he's able to clean up some decent sized threats, and even if he dies in the process, you go get Tsubasa, still not sure on exactly how to pronounce all these names, but you go get Tsubasa, and now you've got a brawler who functionally has target attack as well. This was a theme throughout all the decks that performed well at our store, was being able to clean up your opponent's board. I mean, that's kind of what you go into a sealed event expecting, to have to deal with a lot of board-centric chaos. Buki into Tsubasa felt fantastic, hugely powerful combo. I actually had 2 Tsubasas, so I thought, oh, that's a Misshaper target. Another card that kind of surprised me was the Maiden in Distress. Now, this is a 3-cost, 1,000 power unit, which is relatively weak, but you can exhaust her to create a 1,000 power Knight token with Guardian, and sometimes that's all it took. You just, oh, well, now I've got another Guardian, you can't do anything about it. What now? That card performed very well for me. I had the Shrieker and the Wailing Widow in my deck, and both of these were in there entirely because I wanted to try to be able to play the Obsidian Gargoyle and play it for free. I thought that would feel really good. Never happened. Not once did I ever get that. I did get a lot of extra value out of my cards, a lot of Hoenna Golems. Between the Hoenna Golems and Buckeye being able to deny damage, I felt like some of the cards that were in my deck were less relevant than the Champion in Spirit that I started the game with. One combo that probably was not good and I shouldn't have put in my deck, but actually worked on the second turn of my first game, was the Savage Cell Sword plus Ketsu the Living Armor. So the Savage Cell Sword says you have to discard a gear in order to attack with him. So I discarded Ketsu, declared an attack with the Savage Cell Sword, and then Ketsu equipped to him. So I had this cool like turn 1 play. I only pulled 1 gear in all my packs, so I could only do it once, although I did pack both Savage Cell Swords into my deck. Probably not a good card, probably didn't need to play it, but the fact that that combo worked the one time felt pretty terrific. Shrieker performed admirably. I had a couple of 6-drops in my deck, neither of them ever saw play. Games were over much quicker than that. Out of the spell kit that I ran, the March of the Quorum Brigade never felt relevant. I never felt like I was in a position where I wanted to play it. In the games where I was really dominantly in control of the board and could have drawn a bunch of cards, it would have caused me to overdraw. And in the games where there was a little bit more parity, I didn't want to draw cards and then have to discard them. That card ended up not being relevant. Neutral Evil is extremely good. That card won me the game a couple of times. And the 1-cost Dark Spell Trick, once I used it to target a Savage Sellsword so I could attack with him without having the gear to discard. So there were some combos and synergies there. One card that I thought would be good was the Hallowed Harpist. I like the idea of a 1500 Guardian that when it dies I can draw a card. I neglected, however, to read the part of the text where that card doesn't deal damage. If I were to do this again, not sure that card would have made the cut into my deck. The Bone Scavenger. I had 2 of these in my deck, and it wasn't until maybe the middle of my second game or where I realized I could use the Bone Scavenger as many times per turn as I had Shardlight and units in the KO pile to target. So the first game I played my Bone Scavenger and I was once per turn putting a 500 token on it, and that got out of control pretty quick. Once I realized I could spend as much Shardlight as I wanted to, things like Shrieker and Wailing Widow helped me get there, to be sure, but also my opponents have things going to the KO pile. Hoenn wants me to kill things. Target attack with Bookie and the Brawler power with Tsubasa, these things all fed into KO piles that are just completely bursting with units for me to target with the Bone Scavenger, and this card feels busted. Now, in Constructed, there's a lot more answers to it. I'm not sure that it's going to be as busted as it felt in Sealed, but man, opening up with one of those on turn 1 and then following up with like a Shrieker or playing the Shrieker to put some stuff in the KO pile, then having the Bone Scavenger, disgusting. Absolutely just a disgusting card. The Reckless Shard Beast. Now, in a 3-tower format, I was a little worried about running the Reckless Shard Beast at all. Like, maybe that slot should have been given to another card. Don't recall exactly what my card pool looked like that I could have replaced that 2-drop with, but this curve for this Sealed deck, and I'll put a picture of the deck in the show notes, this curve is hilarious. It's basically all 1 and 2 drops and little else. But I thought to myself that having the ability to nuke a tower and push for game could be useful. I only used the power once, and the one time that I used it was probably not the best because I attacked and swung into my opponent's tower, but none of their towers were revealed. So I attacked blindly and happened to get the fire tower, and the only target for them to target was the Shard Beast. So it worked out for me, but it was not the best play. One of the drawbacks of having to kind of judge and run an event, especially with my 8-year-old there, and also playing it, was there was a fair amount of distraction all the way around. Not everybody was in great spirits. We never had any issues with the games going to time or anybody feeling like they weren't getting the attention they needed if they had a ruling question or anything like that. My opponents never seemed to be upset if I had to kind of lean away from our game to answer a question. Part of what made this so easy to run while wearing multiple hats is that everybody who turned out to our store, we all knew each other. And obviously when people know each other, it's easier to go, hey man, hang on a second, let me answer this question. But if there were more people, or if there were people who I didn't have a pre-existing relationship with, I'm not totally sure I would have been able to pull off running the event, answering rules questions, and playing in it all at the same time. And honestly, that's a problem I would love to have. I would like to see more player participation at the store. But for a first Sealed event for this tiny card game, I could not have higher praise. I hope everybody else's weekends went as well, and that everybody pulled stamped cards out of all their packs. So that's kind of my recap of the Sealed event. I do think we'll make some improvements on it the next time we do this at the store, and I think that running Sealed, not even as a sneak peek, but just as something to do on a Sunday afternoon, is something that we're going to implement at our store and bring that back around. Again, it was just so much fun. I like the pacing of the format. I like how fast and frantic the games feel. You're kind of under pressure from the first moment you sit down, and you have to respond to that pressure by being aggressive to the other player. It just felt awesome. I guess I'm kind of getting to the point now where I'm just repeating myself with high praise for the format, but that's the weekend I had. That's the way the games felt opening the packs, other than the one blemish of pulling cards that I already had playsets of for a brand new set that just came out. That is not a good feeling. I think ARG needs to know about it, and they need to take steps going forward to make sure nobody ever has their excitement for the first day of a new set, getting to look at new cards, and they open a pack and get a card they already have too many copies of that they overpaid for. Not a good feeling. Those kind of emotional responses to the cards that you pull out of your pack. It's a new game. I'm sure they'll do better in the future, and I don't want to allow that criticism, however valid, to overshadow what was really a fantastic event. The price point, $20 for essentially 7 packs plus a promo card, is very, very good. I think that should continue for future sneak peeks, and I think that this is a great way to pull some new players in to see what we were doing. There were people in the store who asked questions about the game and how we were playing, and I think that this could not have gone better, at least at our local store. Everybody had fun, and everybody is anxious to do it again once Revelations comes out. We want to play more sealed just because we like the format so much. So that's my recap of our sneak peek event. I hope everybody else's events went great, and till next time, go win some games.